Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca Jorge, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paulini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly. And I am very pleased to be celebrating the second birthday of the show with the one, the only Vanch Vermani, who was always great to have on. Vanch, very glad to have you back. How are you doing?
Doing well. That's awesome. It's been 2 years already. Time really flies. It's been a while since I've been on one of these, so happy to be here for the 2-year anniversary.
Yeah, this is 2 years since since I did a show with Hanlon Walsh on reviewing the Charleston 2023 tournament. I don't think it was marked. It was also ATP Weekly's birthday today, but I don't know if Damien mentioned that. But well, let's go to Charleston 2025 and let's dive right in. And let's talk about Jessica Pegula. And well, let's face it. I think let's talk about her whole season before let's talk about her run in Charleston. But most match wins of 2025 out of anyone so far. Top 5 in the race, just 5 points behind Swiatek, and pretty much clear from the field, the rest of the field. Do we need to start giving her automatic title contender status at higher level tournaments?
It's a good question. I mean, she's shown it now on the North American hardcourt, certainly, that she's been the second best player behind Aryna Sabalenka, particularly last year winning Toronto, finals of Cincinnati, finals of US Open, and then finals here in Miami. So if she's not playing Aryna Sabalenka in one of these, big hardcourt finals, I mean, she's shown that she's kind of the second best player on that. But I think in general, her year overall, it's been really good. The only blemish was that Australian Open round 3 loss against Olga Danilovic. It was a tough one for her, but aside from that, I mean, the way she's come back afterwards, and 17 of her last 19 matches, I believe she's won, including a title in Austin where she beat, McCartney Kessler, who was not an easy opponent in the final for sure. And then, round of 16 at Indian Wells, it was a tight 3-setter to Elena Svitolina, but, she's still got a couple of wins there, and it's not her best preferred court conditions anyway. And then, gets through to the final. But I thought this was really impressive because physically it's a really tough turnaround, to go from Miami to then all of a sudden green clay the very next day, basically a pretty stacked field in Charleston. Wasn't an easy draw either, in the quarters and semis and finals. She really had to battle tricky conditions in the wind. Danielle Collins, defending champion last year, she's down 1-6, love 2, and she was in big trouble there. And the fact that she managed to turn that around and, just be so crafty. I love the way she used her drop shots this week, especially on the backhand and the forehand, but also just her ability to play certain awkward shots to get these big hitters in uncomfortable situations. I mean, the Alexandrova match was fantastic. I love that third set. Certainly one of the best kind of problem-solving sets I've seen from a top player on either tour this year, that third one. So that was, you kind of felt like she was the favorite coming into the final, but Kenin had been playing outstanding tennis all week, and it was a great week for her also to be back, I think, where she's at 34, 33, something like that in the world right now. So she's also had a good last 4 months. And she had lost to Coco Gauff 0-0 in Miami. So quite a turnaround for her to make the final. But yeah, Pegula goes into this clay season, and I think believing that she can contend for one of these big titles in maybe Madrid and Rome and Roland Garros, where she's had some success. But I think this year she believes she can do even better.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And you've kind of picked up on everything. Yeah, Pegula was relentless in every match. I like the drop shot, spot on. That was key to her run for a lot of the time. But also, even when her own, she's been up and down through the tournament. Up until the final, I would have said Sofia Kenin was playing the most consistently strong tennis. But now we've got Pegula. But then Pegula just kept staying in the matches and kind of just waiting for things to turn right her way and just keeping on trying. And it's so able to neutralize big hitters. But I think Pegula hits bigger than most people give her credit for. Certainly from my observation, watching her at Wimbledon, like thinking, good grief, she really cracks the ball. But yeah, I think it's certainly been very impressive the way she's just handled this title run, as I say, beating the defending champion, Danielle Collins, not backing down a crazy match against Alexandrova, coming back from 1-5 down the second set against Kenin. Huge results for Jessica Pegula, and it's going to give her a lot of confidence, especially Sivan. And this is something that Mario has tweeted. She's not defending any points this clay season. So when she comes back to the US in sort of July, August time, September, she is very likely still going to be the US number one, as she's now number 3 ahead of Coco Gauff and in the world. And if there's a disaster for Swiatek at the clay season, there's a good chance Pegula's going to be world number 2.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like, she didn't play anything on clay last year. She had a neck problem, I believe, and then she had to take the whole clay swing off. So she only has points to gain, and she won the 500 in Berlin, but she lost early at Wimbledon as well, so she can make up points there too, which is going to be really big because she has a ton coming up to defend after that. But honestly, like, also just the way that she's been playing and how she's carrying the confidence forward, I feel like, she has a good chance of getting to number 2 this time, where I wouldn't have said that coming into Miami, but now we're in a whole different position with her. So that's great. Yeah.
Which kind of brings back to the earlier question we had about, is she an automatic title contender? Like, she's obviously one of the most consistently up there players. Certainly I need to start considering whether she's a player that we need to mention progress for every sort of, if she's playing in the same sort of category as others, which I might mention a bit later, like the other kind of players who kind of stood out so far in 2025. So obviously the other players in the top 5, Swiatek, Sabalenka, Andreeva, Keys, Gauff and Raducanu deserve look-ins as well. But reality is that the thing that kind of holds us back from putting Pegula in that is her matchup with these other players. But on paper, the only player she's really got a bad matchup with is Sabalenka, and that's surface dependent.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And on the clay as well, the early part of the clay swing is going to be faster conditions, which I think should favor her. I mean, she's made the final in Madrid. Like, she was a set away from beating Ons Jabeur in 2022. So I could see her doing pretty well there. I'm interested to see her schedule now because she's supposed to play Billie Jean King Cup and she's supposed to play Stuttgart, but this was a lot of tennis that she's played now.
She's confirmed she's playing those tournaments. So she's planning on playing Stuttgart, and her attitude is, well, I'm in Europe anyway, so I may as well play BJK.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think she can do well in those tournaments if she's physically feeling well, because the conditions are better for her. Altitude in Madrid, it should help her serve as well. I feel like she's added a lot more to her game that, she was always. I like what you said about her hitting hard, because I've watched her so many times now in person, and she does take the ball super early and hits it really big, especially off the forehand. It just, the way she can just flatten it out, and the way she's so smart about how she's, constructing the points, like redirecting power. Like, she's very good at that, like stepping in, taking it early on the returns as well. She breaks serve a ton. She doesn't have the most easy finishes on her serve because she doesn't serve huge, but she's hitting her spots a bit better. The second serve sometimes can be a bit vulnerable, but she's shown she has so many other tools from the baseline now that she can counteract a lot of these big hitters. I'm curious to see the Sabalenka matchup on clay if we get it. We've been seeing it a ton on hard courts, but I wonder if she can sort of have a look in. The problem is she actually can break Sabalenka a ton, but then she's not able to hold her own serve in the match enough to get the sets to, like they've had some 7-5 sets, but it hasn't really gone her way thus far. But that's probably about it. I mean, she's beaten Iga like 4 times. She has wins over Coco. Like, yeah, if she gets in these positions, it'll be interesting to see if she can take one of these big titles.
How do you see the Pegula Keys or Pegula Andreeva matchups potentially? There's the other two
Yeah,
players I need to think about right now.
Yeah, the Keys one, it's kind of like Keys just took the racket out of her hand in that third set in Adelaide, and there wasn't that much she could do. And I think that was when she already thought Keys was going to win the title, which she said publicly. But Keys obviously has a higher ceiling, but obviously her floor match in and match out isn't nearly what Pegula's is. Pegula is so much more steady and consistent and reliable. So it kind of depends on Keys more than Pegula, I would say, like which version of Keys shows up on the day. But Andreeva will be fascinating because I do think Andreeva can kind of do everything, and she has a higher ceiling as well. So yeah, I'm not sure. I have to see her play.
In theory, Andreeva does everything Pegula does, but potentially better. But we haven't seen that yet. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Actually, it's a good thing you mentioned Keith, because I do want to actually talk about her briefly, because she's on my players to watch list for as long as. I guess for as long as she's Australian Open champion or remains to be a contender. But obviously her last two tournaments haven't been amazing. Round 3 exit to Ayala in Miami, and then this event kind of going out to Kalinskaya in straight sets as well, in a match that she probably could have wrestled back if she hadn't had a bad game in the second set. Has she kind of returned to about where she was? Very good, but very inconsistent? Or is there still something different about her that we're seeing sort of in this post-Australian Open phase of her career?
Yeah, I thought Indian Wells was good for her to get to the semis, and she won those matches against Mertens and Bencic, and she looked good. But then Sabalenka kind of wiped the floor with her, and I wonder if that took away some of that edge and confidence that she had, because that was such a brutal loss, almost getting double bageled there. But I think Yala was just a case of inspired run from Alexandra, a new type of player that she hadn't really faced before and didn't quite have, the means to problem solve that day. A lot of unforced errors from her. But this one is truly she went down meekly to Kalinskaya in a way that I hadn't seen. I thought she would, take that second set. She certainly had some chances there, but I think she's one of these players that'll just sort of reset. And I don't know I think if she has a similar clay season like she had last year, that would already be a huge win, because last year she had a really good clay season. She was getting to semis and finals and then basically losing to Iga in Arena. And she also won the title in the week before Roland Garros. There's a 500, right? She beat Collins in the final, and then she loses to Navarro in the third round. So if she can replicate something like she did last year, that's already pretty good with the success that she has. So I don't see her totally falling off, but I don't see her winning one of these big titles, if that makes sense. Somewhere in between.
Keys, it's kind of it doesn't necessarily regress back to all the way back to where she was, but maybe might be a struggle for her to kind of repeat that Australian Open. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, but although when we get back on the hard courts and we get on the grass, then I think she's more in the conversation than this part of the year.
Certainly my Wimbledon metrics are kind of telling me that the two favorites for Wimbledon right now would be, if Wimbledon was happening, if we were in grass season right now, I'd be talking about Sabalenka and Keys being the two title favorites.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sabalenka's also due for a big Wimbledon there. She's missed it 2 of the last 3 years. So.
And they're both players that massively missed out in 2024. Sabalenka didn't play because she was injured. Keys got injured halfway through the tournament. If they both played the draw, there's a good chance either of them could have been a big problem for Krejcikova in that final, or even before.
Very true, yeah.
Sabalenka ends up in the draw. No, they would have played Krejcikova in the final.
Yeah, very true. She was winning that match against Paulini and then got injured, so that could have shaken the whole tournament up.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where Keys is at the moment. Kind of sidetracking from Pegula. What about Sophia Kenin? She's got to be one of the big stories of this tournament. The Kenin run, that out of nowhere Kenin run that happens about once a year happened. I'll say again, I really liked how she was playing, and I think she just got tight in set 2 in the final, where she was really making it a contest. And I was going, oh, she could do this. I'm really hoping that loss doesn't set her back, because I really don't want to see another full start for her.
Yeah, this year so far has been a little bit better for her in terms of consistency. She makes the quarters in Dubai. She gets a tough draw at the Australian Open with Coco Gauff, who was pretty in form at the time. Wins a couple of matches in each of her next events, including Miami, where she won a round and then loses to Coco 0-0, which was weird, obviously. But the last time she lost 0-0, she ended up making the final as well in Roland Garros, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, I wonder where she goes from here, because obviously her top level is enough to be in like the top 15 and top 20 in the world. The way she takes the ball super early, those aggressive down the line hits that she has, the way her drop shot is so hard to read, especially on the backhand side because she has two hands on it, and then also just those ways that she can just come back from break point down. There's that signature like cannon hold in the Australian Open. She kind of did that again today in the first set, down 2-all, love 40. She just reeled off like four winners and another unreturned serve, and you're just like, wow, she has these like really hot patches in her. But then she also has those spells in matches like we saw today where she just can't quite get over the line. The nerves come into play, and she just makes two or three quick errors in succession, and then she kind of rushes at the end at 5-6. And you kind of knew once Pegula got one of the breaks back that like the tide was turning and the whole momentum was gone. And yeah, sometimes the people around her, I feel like there's been some kind of a she's changed coaches a few times, but she seems to have this thing with her dad where like sometimes the dad gets really frustrated, or they don't quite always have the same vibes every tournament, and then when they do, she seems in a much happier place. So she's a little hard to predict with this, but I do feel like she will go on a big run at some point in the next 3 or 4 months. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a few first round losses sprinkled in there, or she maybe holds steady where she's at right now. But yeah, I can't really rule out another like maybe a potential comeback into the top 20. Like I could see either case because she's so unpredictable.
Yeah, I'm listening to your kind of description of where she's at, and immediate parallels in my mind to Emma Raducanu, especially when you talk about coaches like not quite matching that slam winning run. The big difference is that Kenin does put together everyone to a final every now and again, whereas Raducanu hasn't yet. But other than that, their careers do seem to be following a similar-ish pattern. Oh, and Kenin gets injured less, I guess.
Yeah, and she probably plays a lot more than Emma. Like she just plays more regularly week to week, whereas Emma has like kind of she schedules herself like she's a top player, like a top 5 player. But sometimes, yeah, she goes on these like extended training blocks, which I don't quite understand, because sometimes she'll go on a really big run, and I'm kind of like, all right, well, keep the momentum, play again soon. Like last year in DC, and then she didn't play anything until the US Open. So I kind of wonder about that sometimes. But she has shown that she can string together 3 or 4 big wins now in a tournament like Miami, which is a positive. So yeah, both these pairs are capable of doing it. They just need like more matches and momentum and better weeks. But like Kenin, now that she's closer to being seeded, that's a good goal. I think she said she wanted to be seeded by Roland Garros, and now she's like very close.
She's got a really good shot.
She's had pretty tough draws in the last few slams, like Pegula in the second round of the US Open, Coco in the first round here, Coco in Wimbledon in the first round last year, Sabalenka in tournaments.
That sort of section of players that's kind of like the bottom end of the top 30, kind of into the top 40, is so competitive. Like it's so competitive in there. Like, and there's some really good names in there. Like Kenin's not the only one. You've got Kanenskaya, Noskova. Like that's going to be a very tough seeding race when we get to Rome, where it's all going to get decided.
Oh yeah, like that area is just so deep in the rankings that like, yeah, and there's going to be someone who's going to be like unseeded and then draw like Iga in the first round,
like Osaka again. Yeah, wouldn't put it past. Speaking of Roland Garros, how much can we read into Charleston as an indicator of Roland Garros form? Is it more of an indicator of who's having a good season overall than it is of like who's gonna play well on the clay?
I mean, usually it's like kind of more of a in between, like a transition period between like the actual European clay and the hard courts. So I don't know if it's like I don't know if there's like any direct like oh, Pegula wins Charleston, therefore she's like a big favorite for Roland Garros. Like I would still have to see. I think Madrid and Rome are better indicators, especially Rome. I would say, just conditions wise for the WTA anyway. For the men, you at least have Monte Carlo, Barcelona, which are more similar-ish. But for the women, I kind of really only look at like who's having a good year overall, and then see who does really well in Rome and maybe past results at RG, rather than like just looking at Charleston. I mean, it could be one of the indicators, but I wouldn't put it like at the top of my list.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I would have been tempted to use it in my RG algorithm a few years ago after Ostapenko made the final in 17, and then and obviously then won Roland Garros.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing. So it's since then, like even though Igor Swiatek doesn't play it, like there's still other people who could play, who could go on deep runs, but Coco's never played it, never plays it, and she always does well at RG. I don't think Paolini or Mukova or Haddad Meyer or Andreeva have ever really done well, did well there in the years they made deep runs in the last couple of years. So yeah, I'd say, but the winners do tend to be people who are overall having decent runs in their seasons, like Jabeur in 23. Obviously was kind of in the mix as a top player. Collins had just come off that insane Miami run, and continued that run into Madrid. Could have been Sabalenka in that match, and Pegula, as we've just said, is having a great season. So I think for me, it's an overall indicator of who's having a great season at the moment. For that, and I think that's where it kind of comes back. Great tournament though, and like really high quality name in it, even if the matches didn't quite work out. Do you have a best match of the week from Charleston? Is Pegula versus Alexandrova really the only option, or would you go with Anisimova versus Navarro? Or one for a wild card out there?
I think it kind of depends on your stylistic preferences. Like Navarro versus Anisimova is a good style. It was a good contrast of style in terms of, and you had two tight sets as well, which were fairly competitive. I thought maybe if the tiebreak had been a little bit better and both players would have played well at the same time, maybe, and had gone to a third. But I just feel like the drama that we got in Pegula versus Alexandrova was so elevated because neither player could really hold, and Pegula was down a break twice, and finally they kind of both brought it all at once. You had Alexandrova like playing some of her best tennis because she herself is also coached by Igor Andreev now, and I've seen a lot more variety in her game, and there were so many twists and turns at the end. I still wasn't sure if Pegula was going to serve it out at 6-5. So like in terms of like drama and like the kind of tennis that they played in those conditions, I was impressed actually, because it was like really gusty and windy, and Pegula and Anisimova and Navarro was great, but sometimes I felt like the level from both wasn't quite as high. So I don't know. I'd probably go with the Pegula Alexandrova. It was just a higher stakes match.
I think a lot of people would as well. I missed that match live, so I watched it back. But I think because I'd seen the score, the drama was kind of lost on me. But I could tell it was a bit of a crazy third set. I think when you watch it knowing what's going to happen, it kind of takes a little bit out of the match. But yeah, to experience it, like it probably would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, this is one of those fun WTA matches. Are there any other stories from Charleston you want to make sure we mention before we move on?
Let's see. I mean, I think we touched on all the semifinalists. I mean, Alexandrova is having a good year overall.
I think we mentioned Anisimova actually.
Yeah, Anisimova, it was sad to see her retire in the semifinal. That's what I wanted to say. Her back was causing her issues towards the end of the Navarro match, which I thought actually made her play a little bit more aggressively. But here it was very clear she wasn't going to be able to compete at all after 2-1 in the first set. So that was a bit sad. She's had a good year. She's number 6 in the race. Maybe we'll see her do something big on the clay again. She's a former Roland Garros semifinalist. So that was sad that like we didn't get to see a full match between her and Kenin. It was their first meeting in like over almost 8 years. They'd like never met, which was crazy.
Yeah, as Samova looked like she might be kind of backing up that Doha run. But yeah, that back seems to be massively messing with her at the moment because it also played a part in a little bit in her Miami loss. I don't want to take too much away from Raducanu in that match, but the back was definitely bothering Anisimova. So hopefully that's not something she has to carry for too long into the clay season. That would be a real shame. I'm going to mention I think there's 2 stories from Bogota, which is also happening this week, that is worth mentioning. And I guess point number 1 is Camila Osorio wins the Bogota title for the 3rd time in 5 years. Pretty much, it's literally her backyard. Like, it's basically the rest of the draw turns up to try and beat her when the Bogota 250 happens.
Yeah, this is one of those. It's like how I remember, was it on the ATP side? Victor Estrada Burgos won Ecuador like 3 times. He won the title in Quito in like 4 years. This reminds me a little bit of that, because Osorio is so fun to watch with all of her variety and how well she like competes and how scrappy she is and how quick she is as well. And she's like one of those, one of those players that can trip up a top seed every now and then, but hasn't really managed a big run outside of this 250. So I would love to see her do something else at some point, maybe in Madrid with the altitude. She seems to play well with the altitude. I feel like the slice is harder to deal with in altitude than in other places. So that's probably also one of the reasons. But mostly she's done really well at this level of competition, and she's just like embraced the home crowd and clay as well. And yeah, it was great. I watched her play in Miami against Victoria Mboko, and that was a crazy atmosphere.
Oh yeah,
with all the support that she gets there in Miami as well.
Imagine.
So really, really likable player.
Oh yeah, she's good fun. Yeah, and yeah, as you said, really likable. Maybe plays her best on altitude clay, Bogota, Madrid, those kind of conditions, but or anywhere in Mexico, really. But overall, Osorio is sort of someone you can count on to at least, make an entertaining kind of clay court match. And if you really like the kind of style of the clay courter, she's probably your player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the only other story from Bogota was actually one of the semi-finalists, a qualifier, 16-year-old Julieta Pareja, who I was like, okay, like I always tend to look at who the young players are in the draw, and I kind of was struggling to look past. I thought, oh, this tournament might be a good opportunity for Iva Jovic to do well, and there were a few Colombian teenagers in there, and I thought, oh, there's this Pareja girl. See how she does. She's playing one of the Colombian teenagers, and then she just kept winning, and she got to the semi-finals. And I need to actually sit down properly and watch one of her matches. And obviously her game is probably still fairly raw, given she's 16. But she seemed to be handling the situation really well. And certainly seemed kind of in a state of shock that she was doing this well at tour level events. So I guess, I don't know, did you manage to catch any of that, Vanch? And is Pareja a name that we need to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I've seen only a few points of her. Like you haven't really gotten the chance yet to watch a full match, but it was impressive the way she came through qualies and made the semis without dropping a set. I remember hearing her name around Indian Wells because she got into the qualies there and she played Tomljanovic, and it was like a tight 4-4 match. And she had been coming off of like this series of ITFs that she'd played in California, in like Rancho Santa Fe area, which is like fairly close to where I live. Mm-hmm. So I'd been hearing her name for a while, and I've seen her play. She has like easy power. She moves pretty well, takes the ball early, but I think it's still quite raw. Still, there's a lot of things. Obviously, I mean, she's 16, so physically she has a lot more room to develop also, and like just gain more experiences. But I kind of want to see her in other different types of situations before I can like properly judge her potential, because I don't have a great read on it yet.
No, I don't either. So I was hoping you did, but never mind. But yeah, Julieta Pareja, I'm going to be keep marking that name as someone to keep an eye out for. If she ever gets a wild card into a big draw or something like that. See if we can keep an eye on them. There's definitely a few young players starting to make some impact on the tour. I'm thinking of someone like Victoria Umbuko as well, who made some waves in Miami. But that's kind of the state of the future of the WTA. And I thought, what a better, given you were coming on, it's obviously, I thought it was a good point to kind of review where we are in the year so far, which has kind of been kind of the theme of some of the questions I've been thinking about here. And what would you say the highlights have been of the WTA in 2025 so far? What have been like the big defining stories of the season so far?
Yeah, without a shadow of the doubt, the biggest story in 2025 has to be the Madison Keys Australian Open triumph. I mean, just the way she beat Raducanu, Sabalenka, and Swiatek all to win the tournament, the way she had sort of let go of the idea of winning a slam, and then psychologically she was able to shift her mindset, and obviously all the changes she made with her racket and her ball toss, her mostly the mental side. That was really big how she came through in those big moments. So obviously that, and then secondly, Mira Andreeva winning the back-to-back 1000s, and then going on a win streak and doing it. I think we all kind of thought like she had that level in her, and she had been showing it at times last year. But I certainly didn't expect her to win 2 1000s back-to-back, especially Dubai and Indian Wells, which were like so different in different conditions, and do it the way she did, and then also the Sabalenka block that she had in the final, and the way she turned that one around. And so that makes you really excited to see what she does on the clay season. And then for a while the story was also like, oh, Sabalenka and Swiatek haven't won a big title yet, and but then Sabalenka kind of rewrited the ship with the good Indian Wells in Miami, and then now you're kind of looking at Iga to see if the clay can be a big reset for her. But those would be the big stories. Oh, and then in the beginning there was also Coco at United Cup, but obviously she's cooled off since then and hasn't been quite the same player. So we'll see if the clay is a big reset for Coco.
It should be, because she likes it. But you're right. I'm shocked at how she's cooled off, to be honest, given like how she was playing back end of last year and then United Cup and that. But Dossa loss at the Australian Open really seems to have shaken her up. And made a little of confidence. Iga's situation is obviously hard to read because like it's clay by which she's mainly judged. I know a lot of people kind of point out, well, she doesn't win a lot on hard courts comparatively, but like if she's not winning much on her best surface, that's going to be the main thing now. But I'd agree with you and kind of like, it's Keys and Andreeva that's kind of been the big stars. And I'm with you. Andreeva, I wasn't expecting her to reach that kind of level yet as a 17-year-old. I didn't think 17-year-olds did that in tennis anymore. I didn't think it would be something that was physically possible in the modern game, not like back in the 90s or the early 2000s. That's like 3 decades ago, and here she is. She's doing it now, and that's really impressive. And I definitely think if you would ask me now, who are the favorites for Madrid, I actually think it's really hard to pick between Andreeva, Sabalenka, and Swiatek. I genuinely think it's a close 3-way race for Madrid between those three, because Andreeva loves that tournament, and so does Sabalenka and Swiatek, given past track records. So Stuttgart's going to be interesting to see whether that changes that picture for me. But let's zoom out a little bit. So like this is going to inform the next question. It's probably a similar answer, but how would you say, like, what's your view on the state of the WTA tour at the moment, in terms of the big picture of like who the big names are? Like when we started doing weekly shows, Arina Sabalenka just really accelerated to be the main rival to Iga Swiatek, and Elena Raducanu was throwing herself into the mix too. This time last year, Swiatek looked like she was starting to pull away again a little bit, especially once we hit the clay season. She really turned on the afterburners, and now it looks like that's kind of reversed, and it's Sabalenka at the front. And obviously, points-wise, she's got a huge gap, but it doesn't feel like, compared to the rest of the field, there's much of a gap.
Yeah, I mean, like Sabalenka did lose those 2 big finals, so you did have some questions for her coming into Miami in terms of can she reestablish herself as like? I mean, she is the world number one. She has been the best player the last 1 year, but can she kind of win that big title, get that lead in the points race, and then go into clay season with feeling like I'm right up there with Iga. But now the question becomes, does how does Andreeva handle the pressure of being already number 3 in the race and being a top 6, 7 player, like expected to like go pretty deep in these tournaments now? And how does she handle those really high standards that she set for herself? And then basically how does, I think it has to go back to Iga in terms of the clay, because this time last year she was so dominant, and because after the Australian Open she won 5 titles, and does she, because she hasn't won a title since Roland Garros either, so she would like to get one, I'm sure. And then Stuttgart has been a place that's been good for her, but that was the one title she didn't win last year. So you sort of wonder if she's able to get over the line, because she's also been playing well. It's not like she hasn't been. It's not like the season has been a disaster. The standards are really, really high for her, but she has played like some few individual good matches. But then every time she gets to the quarters or semis, we kind of haven't seen the best version of her, and she's tended to show a lot more nerves, and the mental side hasn't been as stable as before. So if she can get she can get a really big win like that, then it kind of changes things. And the Australian Open, she came really close in that semis with Keys, but since then it kind of revolves around that. And then obviously you also have the drop off from Raducanu and Coco, which I guess is also another talking point in all this. And then you had players like Bencic and Alexandrova, and I was going to name one more: Bencic, Alexandrova, and Clara Towson. Yeah, thank you. That was the other one. And so they managed to have some really great success in February, but they haven't quite been the main talking point in March. And I mean, I guess Alexandrova, made the semis this week in Charleston, but I'm interested to see if that was just a point in time of the year, or they actually come back and we see more good success from them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, the clay season is where we will have a real idea of what the big picture is now. And even then, that's not how the big picture is probably going to stay, because when I listed back the last couple of years, it's been a real yo-yo of who's kind of ahead between Iga and Arena, and there's other people coming in. We've seen other people coming in and falling out of the mix. I think Mira's probably here to stay in the mix. How close she is probably going to depend. Pegula as well. After this week.
I forgot to mention Badosa, but like she's also Badosa and Navarro are players like that who are also like sort of borderline top 10 right now, and they sort of had their good moments, but like Badosa hasn't been able to do it because of her back issues, and then Navarro has been like, she won the 500 in Merida and she made the quarterfinals, but outside of that she hasn't been doing as well as she would have liked last year. So. And then I wonder also if the clay is going to be another time for Paolini and Mohova as well, because they're kind of in that same bucket of got
clay and grass
last year in the slams, and clay and grass should be really good for them. So somebody is going to be falling back in who showed us flashes earlier.
There's just so many good players out there, and that's what the beauty of the WTA is. Like, everyone is just so good. Certainly there's a lot of players in the mix with really good things on their CV. I'd say about 70 odd players probably, with at least something on their CV to kind of go, oh, that's a noteworthy run at an event. The ones who are kind of in the mix day in, day out, that's a very small number, but anyone can be a factor. And I think that's really, really exciting. And that's something that hasn't changed in the 2 years of doing this show. Something that is going to change a lot, which we've seen on the screen, has been announced in the comments. I think I saw it was announced a few minutes before we went live. Caroline Wozniacki is pregnant with her 3rd child. And it's interesting because I was actually looking down through the rankings. I was like, oh, Caroline Wozniacki's dropped out the top 100. Oh yeah, I haven't heard from her in ages. What's going on there? Well, I don't think she's going to be playing for a while, if at all, again. But congratulations to Caroline Wozniacki, and all the best for her.
Yeah, all the best. I mean, I think we last saw her at the U.S. Open where she made the fourth round, so went on a good run there. And quarterfinals at Indian Wells, I believe. So she did have like some moments, even if it wasn't quite to the level of anything she was at before. But yeah, and that's cool that she's happy. I'm sure she'll be doing some commentating if she comes back, and maybe in a year or so time she'll think about whether or not she wants to come back again or just call it for goods. But yeah, that 2018 Australian Open will always be a memory she can cherish forever.
Oh yeah,
and world number one for I believe 71 weeks. So amazing career.
It's a good total. Do you know what? This is a bit of a tangent because she didn't play this week, but we haven't. I've barely talked about her on the WTA Weekly show, and yet other than to hype up the comeback, but similar age player who's just coming back from having a kid, Petra Kvitova, 0 for 3 on her comeback. How are you rating that so far?
Yeah, I would say it's like going about what I expected. I mean, I know she hasn't won a match yet, but she's been playing like, how she was playing before, just needs more matches to get sharp. I'm waiting to see when the grass comes around and like a place like Eastbourne or maybe in Madrid or something like that. She can have a big run kind of out of nowhere, because she has been one of those players where she has been as high as number 2 in the world, but they haven't come off of like being consistent every week, but just having like 3 or 4 really amazing weeks.
I mean, she should have been world number 1. The rankings point system at the time was a bit weird.
Probably the best player WTA and ATP ever to have not been number 1, right?
Yeah.
Or not been, probably, yeah.
I mean, she was only a few points off Wozniacki at the end of 2011. Could have taken over at 2012 had Azarenka not gone on that blockbuster run and won the Australian Open.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's I think she's definitely a contender for that. I have to really think deeply, but I certainly can't argue with that off the top of my head. For Kvitova, that 2011 season she had was amazing. Right, bit of nostalgia there. Moving forward, and I appreciate this WTA Weekly's felt like there's a lot of bullet points in this episode. There's been a lot of different talking points, but not necessarily a lot of things to dig into. As you said, like Charleston's a hard event to kind of read, but it's interesting to see where we're at with the sort of the tour about now.
We just announced today, by the way, that they will be doing equal prize money with ATP 500 events starting next year,
which is fantastic. They need to.
That's great news. Yeah.
Which is a good sign that WTA is getting some cash behind it as well, that they can do that.
Yeah.
So that's
I guess the tournament can afford to with with the facility and also just like how upgraded it feels. It's been like the best WTA. It's been like the best 500 tournament like for the last 3 years, I believe.
Good chance for getting a 4th in a row.
Yeah, which makes sense. It's always been like a favorite tournament for the players.
It's certainly got a really good field.
I really want to go there. I haven't managed to do it yet, but the Miami trips have been so hectic the last couple of years.
Yeah,
I haven't, and also it's I wish I could just go once in the next couple of years, because they always get an amazing field. The tennis is really great, and it's a really awesome showcase for women's tennis.
Yeah, I agree. It always is, because it really shows off the depth of the WTA field.
Yeah.
I find that's
where the location has so much history, and there's a lot to do in the city outside of the tournament as well, which is cool.
Yeah, I think you should probably check it out. I mean, I've still yet to go to the US. The list of US tournaments to visit is too long, but I think I agree with you. Charleston looks like a really great place to kind of go, and you can see its kind of history and heritage. And I believe it was kind of an equivalent of a 1,000 at one point in its history. Back in the day, 2000s, I think.
It was, yeah. It was like a premier.
And you can tell looking at it, like that tournament,
indeed.
Definitely been got a lot of pedigree to it, no matter what level. But we are taking a week off on the WTA tour. But it doesn't mean the women are taking a week off, because it's the Billie Jean King Cup. And it's the qualifiers for the finals at the end of the year. Or, if you like how I do it, it's the equivalent of a World Cup in either soccer or rugby. that has the group stage and then the knockouts, and the group stage is happening several months before the knockouts. That's how I kind of view it. I wanted to, I don't know if you've known the groups, I can go through them with you, but we've obviously got 6 groups taking place. Just want to hear from you. Who do you think is making it out of each group? So I don't know if you've seen the groups, Vanch.
I haven't actually, but I'll pull it up right now.
Well, I'll tell you what they are while you're pulling it up. So Group 1 is Canada, Japan, and Romania. Before you say Canada, Fernandez and Andreescu are not playing. Their top player is Rebecca Marino. Victoria Mboko and Marina Stakusic also playing. Japan have got Uchijima and Ayo Ito, and the Shibahara Ayama doubles combo. And Romania is being led by Todoni. So none of the kind of established Romanian players are there. So, yeah, and that's being played in Japan. So that's the first one. Want to hear your thoughts on, just again off the top, just off that information, what your thoughts are on how that group's going to
go? Canada, you would have thought coming in would be a bigger favorite, but now that you mentioned the list of players, yeah, maybe like Romania could actually do something pretty big.
It's only pretty close in terms of player pedigree. I'm actually going to go with Japan. I think Japan's getting through this one. It helps other hosts, but also they've got the strongest doubles combination, which could help if it goes to a deciding rubber. And I think Uchijima is an underrated player. So I'm probably the highest ranked out of the group. So I'd probably go with Japan being the favourites to come through that one and knock out the defending champions. No,
can you list the players again from Romania? I think I might
Todoni is the only noteworthy player, like Begu and Christian. Those got that kind of whoever else they've got.
Oh, and you're saying it's in Japan, right?
Okay. Yeah, it's in Japan, yeah. And but like
actually, the doubles. I would probably favor Japan too then. Yeah. With the doubles combination.
Yeah. Begu and Christian and those kind of players, they're not playing. Yeah. So and they obviously don't have Halep anymore. So that's Group 1. Group 2, or Group B, I should say, is Czechia, Spain, and Brazil, which is pretty stacked, and that's got one of the potentially interesting clashes, 2 biggest clashes of the tour, of the event happening, because you could have a Linda Noskova Beatrice Haddad-Maia match, which that's going to be good, I think. But yeah, Haddad-Maia is the top player for Brazil. They've also got Stefani and Pigossi. Czechia's got Noskova, who's leading the team, along with Buskova and Bayek. And Spain has got Buxa, Buzash Monero, and Sara Ceribes Tormo. So some pedigree amongst that, but I'm looking at the depth of squad that Czechia's got. I'm struggling to see past them, especially since they're the hosts.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Czechia. I think that one's pretty clear cut.
Yeah. Although I'm looking forward to seeing what Haddad-Maia does against Noskova, because that could be a really tough one.
Same.
You've got Group C next: Slovakia, the US, and Denmark. Slovakia's got the same team as who went to the finals last year, led by Rebecca Shramkova. Denmark is being led by Clara Towson. The US has got Jessica Pegula, who is playing, Danielle Collins, and McCartney Kessler. So I think they might be the visitors, but I think the US again has got the deepest squad. But I'd be very interested to see what a Pegula Towson match looks like, or Collins Towson, depending on who the US decide to play.
Yeah, just like Czechia, you have to favor the depth of the US team, but it could get interesting, Yeah. Towson plays the kind of tennis she played in the first couple of months of the year, and if Shramkova, elevates in BJK Cup, could be good.
And obviously Towson helped Denmark get promoted into the qualifiers last year. which is where we saw her performing well, which is where we got these friend of the show interviews from. They are now a year old, which is great. Yeah, when John interviewed Towson, Somnes, and Layman's, some of whom will be mentioned again. But yeah, Towson is going to be the wild card in that one. I think I agree with you there. Group D is in Australia. The Australian team has got Tomjanovic, Storm Hunter, Maya Joint, Kimberly Birrell, and Ellen Perez. Colombia is being led by Camila Osorio and Emilia Arango, and Kazakhstan has got both Elena Rybakina and Yulia Putintseva. And Rybakina seems to already be in Australia, possibly, or have gone back there. So it's interesting that she's choosing to play this event. It's why she's not playing Stuttgart, probably. She's, I would say, given that Kazakhstan have got a really strong number 1 and number 2 player, I'm struggling to see past them making through that group. Although Australia have got some good depth.
Yeah, certainly. Australia has a shot though. Like I would put Kazakhstan as a favorite, but Australia is like pretty close second, especially with the doubles.
If you've got Perez on the team, Perez is the best doubles player. So if one of the Kazakhstan players underperforms or doesn't play, they've got a problem.
Yeah. Same. You don't have Kazakhina for the singles, right?
No, they're not allowed.
Not yet. Yeah.
And that's going to take a while.
In the future. That'll be interesting when she plays PJK Cup.
Yeah, because I don't think Savil's allowed to play either.
Oh yeah.
So that's the thing with that. Do feel sorry for Colombia. They're probably going to struggle, especially since not the favoured conditions for both Osorio and Arango. All right, then got Group E, which is in Poland. However, they have been hit by the withdrawal of Iga Swiatek, who probably would have been a huge crowd draw had she decided to play. Understanding with her schedule, it just doesn't suit her. And it's a big deal, I think, for that. So completely understand why Iga's not playing. I guess it's a shame for the event because I think that would have created a really fun atmosphere. Magdalena is leading the Polish team, but Freck is not there. I think Jolanska and Carver are playing though. Switzerland's got Golubich, Teichmann, and Celine Neef, who obviously made some waves last year. And then Ukraine has got Marta Kostyuk, Elina Svitolina, and the Kitchenok sisters.
Yeah, so probably Ukraine becomes a bigger favorite now, especially with the withdrawals of Iga and Belinda.
Yeah, Belinda's not playing either, so that's going to really knock Switzerland. I think even if Iga was playing, she would be the number 1 favorite against whether she played Kostyuk or Svitolina in the number 1 match, but the number 2 match would be very competitive. Ukraine would be favoring that, and even if you put Iga in the doubles,
true,
with Carver, I think the Kitchenok sisters are obviously established, so that would be a really tough match for them. So you really Iga would have had to have been Poland's. Iga was Poland's best hope of getting through. I think Ukraine are probably winning that group.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they don't win it.
Yeah. And then the last group, which is in the Netherlands. Netherlands being led by Susan Leemans, and they've got Demi Scherzer as their doubles player. GB are taking part. Noama Raducanu doesn't suit her to play at the moment, so she's pulled out. But Katie Bolter's still leading them out. They've got Harriet Dart and Sanai Kotal. And then Germany's team is basically all of the Stuttgart wildcards. Eva Lies, Lara Siegmund, Helene Niemeyer, and Tatiana Maria. And yes, I have looked at the wildcard list for Stuttgart. They are playing Stuttgart straight after as well. So that's probably the hardest to call group because they're pretty similar level players, particularly if Leemans gets going. But if I'm looking at maybe, I guess it's going to be really, really competitive, but I'm going to favor GB.
Yeah, probably slightly GB as well for me. With Bolter and Yeah, mainly I could say Boulder could do something this weekend.
Bolton's the strongest number one player on
Yeah.
paper of that group.
Yeah. Who else is playing for GB that you said?
Sunai Kartal and
Oh
Harriet
yes,
Dart.
and Harry Dart. Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, and so that's pretty comparable to like Ivalise and I mean they have Demi Shores. You said for doubles Netherlands.
Yeah, for
No,
the Dutch
that could help
team. Yeah,
them.
the Dutch team. Yeah,
That could certainly help.
yeah. I think Nichols is playing for GB in the doubles, and they've got Jodie Burridge as a fifth if they need her.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
And this is held in Netherlands.
yes.
Right?
So the Netherlands could like just have a hero. Like I could see this the kind of situation where someone like Susan Leymans decides to bring out her best tennis and go, right, I'm playing at home. I'm gonna lift my game and carry this team a bit like the way Shramkova did for the Slovakians.
What surface is this?
I think it's indoors. I think
Indoor hard.
hard.
Indoor hard. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah. I know with the Iga thing, they tried really hard to get Iga to play by putting the same surface conditions as Stuttgart, basically. In Verdun, but yeah, I don't blame Iga at all for not playing this little extra rest could help.
No, especially with the season she's having at the moment. This is a very congested part of the calendar. I mean, ideally, if you're a Polish tennis fan who wants to see Iga play for her country, your best hope of that is Iga doesn't play Stuttgart. If Iga didn't play Stuttgart, this wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure.
But Stuttgart's got 7 out of the top 10 players going, so which is why I'm very excited for it. Well, okay, that's your Billie Jean King Cup preview. So I think, yeah, we're kind of in agreement with who's going through. The favourites to make it through that tour. The groups are Japan, Czechia, the US, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and GB. And they're going to be joining Italy in the finals. And someone else which country it is, I've completely forgotten, but they've got a wild card in. It might be China actually, because it's in China, I think. Yes, China's the host. So Italy and China. That's the 6 countries that are most likely to join Italy and China in the finals. So yeah, there you go. That's your Billie Jean King Cup preview. Obviously, if you are nostalgic for the Group 1. Europe Africa Group 1, which obviously we covered last year. I guess the main kind of teams to keep an eye out for will be France and Latvia, who are playing. France have got Caroline Garcia and Diane Parry and quite a deep squad actually, and Latvia's got Yelena Ostapenko. So we'll see if she decides to perform sharp in that one. But yeah, you can go and check those out. That's happening all week this week. And you could probably, I think you can watch all of those on Tennis Channel International if you're interested. But yeah, that's the WTA Weekly this week. Vansh, thank you for coming on. Have you any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, this is going to be a lighter week for the WTA. Of course, the ATP with Monte Carlo next week is going to be the main sort of focus for most tennis fans. But then Stuttgart comes around, and then we hit the ground running with all the top players. So looking forward to that.
And we start getting into the real endurance test of the tennis calendar. I think it's something I've been thinking about. Is basically Stuttgart all the way to Wimbledon is packed. Like you are pretty much playing every week, more or less, if you're a top player, because all the big clay events are really close together. Then you've got to hit the ground running on grass. You go straight into Wimbledon a month later. Like this is where it's kind of your make or break part of the season.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, we'll have all the top players in Stuttgart, including most likely Pegula as well. So that'll be cool.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Vansh, as always. Hope to have you on again. This is always fun. And thanks to all of you who've been watching and getting involved and sending in your comments. Thanks to everyone who watches or listens to us back. It's it's great to be able to do an exclusive WTA podcast, and is it's really special to do that and put that out there as like a proper analysis show just for the WTA, because it's not a lot of those out there. So thanks all of you for watching. Thanks for being great fans of the WTA with me, and I'll see you next week as we wrap up the Billie Jean King Cup. In the meantime, take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.